I'm Rahana Power.
And today we have Alison Guessou with us. Hello, Alison.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Yeah, we have a lot to discuss with you. But
so many questions. Before we get into that, on a non-necessarily filmmaker level, I'd love to get to know who Alison is a little bit. So Alison, tell us, is there like a fun, secret, interesting talent or skill or just like thing that you do?
Let's see. So my talent is the one that requires like absolutely me not lifting a finger at all. Well, actually just a finger. It's like watching TV basically, or movies. So recently, let's see what I've been into. Just wrapped up the season of a Black Lady sketch show, which is put on by Issa Rae's production company. Featured Robin Thede.
Wow.
But again, it's just Black women getting together doing funny stuff. So that's been my entertainment recently.
Love that.
Nice.
How do you like get involved with that? That's awesome.
So basically it's like once in a while we have subscriptions to HBO, my husband and I, and once in a while we'll just kind of page through and see what's new on there. But this was one of the ones that had been, pretty hyped because I think when it comes to like variety type, not that it's a variety show, but one of these like, scripted comedy shows, I don't know what to classify it as. It's very rare that you'd have like a, full on Black female cast. And so this was one of the first. And so when I first heard about it, I think on it was maybe through Essence magazine or something along those lines, I was like, I'm signing up for that. Definitely need to check it out.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we kind of bonded over like an HBO series called Succession. So all the drama involved with that.
It's vicious and it keeps you at the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
I have yet to see it.
Right. And as terrifying as Logan is, like, I wouldn't want him as a father, but I absolutely admire that man from like a distance. So
yeah. Brian Cox is just
amazing.
Every time I now hear his voice, I think of Logan. It's just kind of like I think it was Blade Runner, the Black Lotus series I was watching, and he's one of the voices, and it's just like, that's not him.
That's like his, career defining for me role.
Yeah.
Because recently, what was I watching? It was a couple of months ago, actually, but there was this movie that had Zach Galifianakis. I forget what it's called, but it's basically him trying to get into politics. And Brian Cox was his dad in that one. And like the first time I watched it, I didn't know who Brian Cox was. But then after going through Succession and going back, it's like, does not even, again, character definitely has a type, but at the same time, it's just so weird to see him in something outside of Logan.
Right.
I feel like he's also in the movie, and there were two of them, but Red. And it's got like John Malkovich and Helen Mirren and stuff. And I feel like he was a really funny, at least in the second one, like a really funny character. Just so not like what I would have expected from him. Like he's excellent at what he does.
Definitely enjoy him.
I'll have to check that out. I missed him in that. Yeah, he's always played like these smaller roles, I feel like supporting. And then this one is just like, whoop, way up there. So,
yeah. And he deserves it. Nails it.
Yeah.
So Alison, let's see where to begin. Let's start with like, how did you get started with in film, for instance?
Yeah. So film was something that, growing up in Cameroon, after reading, a couple of African literature books, I was like, ooh, I'd love to be able to see this on the big screen, and really got me intrigued. Because again, at the time, there wasn't like a ton of that kind of, African-based content. And for me, it was just kind of like one of those things where when you watch a movie and you realize how much it impacts you, you're like, I'd love to have that feeling on other people and hopefully get to, provide some sort of like a positive feeling for everyone else who kind of goes through this experience. It just feels so, magical, just to not make it sound too out there. But again, growing up in Cameroon, it was difficult to tell what that career path would look like or be. So it wasn't until I got here around 2014, I was like, well, I think most people tend to tend to call the shots in film once they've, gone through acting. Everybody knows them, everybody respects them. And then from there, you can basically start to pick your project. So it's like, let me give this acting thing a shot. Tried it for a little bit. I was like, that is definitely not me. I cannot be vulnerable. I am absolutely always guarded 100%. I know even like I've been drunk like a handful of times, but every single time I can remember every single thing. Like I do not know how to let go. So definitely not for me. So 2 years later, when I was kind of, in between jobs, because I do work full time as a project manager, but at the time I was in between. And I talked to somebody who was a producer, and I was like, okay, what does that role do? And they told me a little bit more about it. So as I was doing some research, I got to learn a lot more about, how that ties into film. And I found there was like a lot of similarities between being a project manager and being a producer. And then on top of being a producer, that role gets to call the shots. So like, that's exactly what I want to do. So took the time in 2016 to figure out, how I could get on any and every set possible, just to make sure that I could learn about film, the making of, if anything, because again, I didn't go to film school. I was kind of debating whether or not I wanted to, because again, at the time I had just finished grad school. I had a lot of student loans. So I was like, do I want to add more schooling on top of all of that? Is there an easier way to go about making sure that this is where I want to do, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be? And so did a little bit of production assisting on as many sets as possible. But then again, it got to a point where it didn't become financially viable for me to be freelancing. And my personality is not the kind that can rely on just my wits. Because again, first impressions, I'm not really impressive, But at the same time, it's like, I know myself. I know where my comfort zones are. And I was like, I can't keep doing this freelancing, knowing that I have student loans to pay. I have a mortgage I have to take care of. Life continues. And so kind of did a reassessment of my life at that point and was thinking, okay, based off of my trajectory and where I want to go. Because again, I kind of planned out, I'll start off production assisting, move on to being a production coordinator, then production manager, then maybe UPM, and then eventually I become a producer like that. But I just couldn't get past the production assisting side. And for anybody who's in film knows that it's a very word of mouth industry. So unless you know people, and me not being born here and not having even immersed myself, initially, and knowing that that's the way to do it, it was very difficult to just find opportunities. So, doing an assessment of my life and where I was seeing things going, I was like, well, the only way that not the only way, but one of the ways that I feel like I want to be successful, again, is through those stories that I want to tell for myself. And seeing, what Hollywood tends to do, where it's like, for a while it was only white males can make box office hits. And then it was like, well, maybe some white females along with those white males can make box office hits. Mm-hmm. But then it was never, there were like POCs, like people of color were never really in that conversation.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, I was like, well, do I want my career to be at the mercy of people who tell me that people like me are not interesting, people like me are not marketable, and things like that? So it was a little bit challenging to be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to move to Atlanta or move to LA and be out there to be in a situation that I personally won't feel comfortable in.
Sure.
And all along this while, I had talked to, a neighbor way back when I just wasn't finding opportunities to help me keep moving and progressing. Was like, well, if you can't find those opportunities, then go ahead and create those for yourselves. And that's basically where I've been, So it's right now it's not financially lucrative, just because, again, I'm still kind of, I think, on the come up in that sense. But at the same time, just because, again, through that assessment of, how I see my career going, how I see it happening, I'm okay with, taking things step by step and having that gradual growth. I'm not expecting anything overnight. I feel like I'm able to learn with each project, if anything. I've done like 3 short films, a web series, and I'm planning for a feature. So it's progressively moving forward. But yeah, along the way, it's been just a lot of taking stock of where I'm at, where the industry is at, what I'm comfortable with, just to make sure that, I can still be happy within the industry that I want to be in. So that was a really long one, but
that was incredible. I had like 20 questions and I have a terrible memory, so I'm going to try and remember some of them. First, okay, so one of them was why Minnesota? And you actually answered that already, so that was amazing. But so you're really, I'm going to take a step back. I am so fascinated right now by everything you just said. You are really focused, and I really, really admire how well you have like taken the time and taken the step back to make sure that you're doing what you want, like making yourself happy, but still trying to be very realistic about the situation, about like how the like financially unviable sometimes this can be until all of a sudden it's not, until it works. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, struggle with that. And I very much admire the way that you like take that into account with your happiness, like, and make sure to balance that, because that's huge. So you're really focused on, coming up and moving into that producer, like, real role. Is there anything else, like any other role that you're interested in, or maybe want to dip your toe in, or are you really trying to stay on this path first, and then once you get to where you want to be, then maybe dip your toes in, or like anything else that intrigues you?
Yeah, so it's kind of sort of happened already, because my beeline was for producer. Then it got to a point where when, I was writing scripts and I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I, not that I was writing scripts, but then I had to do it because we couldn't find the work, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to create my script. So that first one was called 911. And then, so when I wrote it, not having any experience in screenwriting either, just talk to a couple of people to figure out, okay, how can I get this made? And then you quickly get the sense that unless you're coming in with a ton of money, not a lot of people want to entertain what it is you're doing, and not just money from yourself, but maybe you have like investors and whatnot. And then you also, in order to be able to have that financial backing, I feel more times on this industry, you really do have to have like a decent name for yourself. Because when you even look at, the shorts, some shorts that make it through some festivals, or even features that make it through some festivals in Sundance, they got like heavy hitters on it. And for my first film, I couldn't get, Idris Elba, right?
Right.
To come act in my short. I called, but
if you do, I will do anything on that set for you for free. you let me know.
Thank you. So it got to a point where it's like, okay, nobody really wants to, not that they want to make this, but at the same time, it's like I was a little bit apprehensive about just finding folks. And then the other side of it too was wanting to make, so that's what got me into writing. So not a writer, not a fan of it, but this has come out of necessity. And the other side of it too was, okay, now to make this thing and direct it, I really did want to make sure that the vision that I had when writing continues through. Because the last thing that I want to do is hand over, what I believe is my labor of love, and then somebody misinterprets it as a director into something else that it's not. And also wanted to make sure that, again, being true to that story, and part of what my objective is in film is to make sure that we do have that diversity in story in film. It didn't feel like I could just find just anyone to be on this. So then I made that foray into directing as well. So it's kind of happened that way, where it's like, okay, at the end of the day, if I can really, really pull the strings, I will just sit and be a producer and be like, you do this, you do that. And then if it doesn't look good, scratch it, fire you, go on to the next. But
I love that.
But, now, again, it's part of just the learning experience and just understanding how things work, and making sure that, by the time I do get to that level where I feel like, okay, yeah, I quote unquote made it, that I really do get a sense of like the inner workings. I kind of, again, made that jump into both writing and directing.
Yeah, that's super impressive with writing. I love the idea of it, and I'm so apprehensive to even try. Like, it's terrifying to me. So, like, incredible that even though, I mean, you said like it's not, you didn't love it, but you did it because you had to, and that's fantastic. And
I've learned with each one too, right? Because I think the good thing with starting with shorts is, you kind of keep it within that 10-page window. So you bit by bit, you learn about dialogue, you learn about story structure, you learn about prose and things like that. And that's stuff that, again, didn't necessarily exist in my initial scripts, but then as I, go and create, it eventually finds its way in there, character development and things like that. And I think that also not only makes me, as a writer, it makes me a better director, but it also makes me a better producer as well, because you understand if you're writing, several locations, you got to know how to be able to realize several locations on a zero budget if you don't have any.
Yes.
Or you rewrite and make it one location. So things like that, where you kind of learn with how intersectional some of these roles are.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the producer side thinking, like when you're writing. Because it's like, oh, okay, how many locations? That's more locations than actors. So, or more actors than locations. I mean, it's kind of a, depends, right? Like when we talk about things like, well, they have budgets, but like Succession, how many different locations or sets do they have for that? It's like,
oh God, you can easily count with each scene. It just keeps adding.
Right. and each episode. So like a web series, like how did you go about, like, I don't know, figuring that out, first of all, like a full series?
For sure. So that one was kind of like my first step into the web series world, because I did always want to do something that I could just put on YouTube and share in terms of like my work and things like that. And then I also wanted something that would allow me to continue to create an audience and interact, because a lot of my other stuff is gated, because I do want to be able to, raise money in a way to keep on funding these things. But at the same time, I was like, I need something out there that would allow me to, not feel so exclusive. And in thinking of the story, I think for sure, just because of the people that have come before that I've seen have had success, have done it through like, comedies or dramedies. So definitely wanted to keep it in that genre as well. Mm-hmm. And then plus I'd gone through like a lot of stuff in 2021. So I wanted something that was light. Mm-hmm. And also on the plus side, I think with the last 3 shorts that I did, I kept it down to like one location. So I wanted to kind of stretch myself a little bit in terms of going a little bit further out with what I can do from like a placement and a people, because the first 3 I always kept it like really, really minimal cast, one location successfully. But then with this one, I was like, let me try and stretch myself a little bit. And then on top of that, it was trying to figure out again, how do you properly have a season arc without, giving away the whole kitchen in the first season. Yeah. So it was definitely, and on top of that, knowing that is one more thing, I was, my producer hat always interrupts. I was like, let me just go ahead and write out what I want to write out, so I can at least get the idea out there. And then once that's on paper, I can come back and think, okay, can we realistically do this? Mm-hmm. So that when it did come to production, when everything was said and done, we were able to, I think I was able to find like at least, 3 solid locations, and we're able to multi-use them. So nice. So there are some locations where it doubled up as a restaurant and an office and something else, something like that. So we try to definitely make sure that with the space that we're able to find and have, it could be multi-purpose.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And as you're, we'll go to our next question later, because I feel like we can kind of easily transition here. As you are now in the forefront of moving into a feature, mm-hmm. How are you taking all of that experience from all those different roles, especially in the web series, and like applying that to this giant project?
Yeah. So doing the web series was definitely me trying to get my feet wet and prepared for what it would mean to do a feature. Mm-hmm. Part of it is because, features are a little bit longer. Most come in at about 110 pages. So we're talking like almost close to 2 hours in terms of time. But knowing that my web series came at about 40 pages, and we really, really, really worked hard and struggled to get through those 40 pages in 4 days. I just need to be that at least helped me make sure that when I'm planning for the feature now, I'm just smarter about how many pages we can actually tackle within a day. And then also knowing that I do want to be on the lower side of a feature, which is roughly at about, that 80 page mm-hmm. mark. So, and if anything, just based off of what the action is going to look like, dialogue is going to look like, it may or may not stretch it. But at the same time, it got me to also have better insight into how I want sound to work with my feature, knowing the issues that I probably wasn't really prepared for from like the web series side, or the different kinds of other conversations I can have with, my DP as we're going into production. So yeah, doing the web series was definitely a learning experience and preparation for the feature, because it kept it where it was still, a short window, because the feature will take more than 4 days, but it kept in a smaller window where I could kind of, trial and error what I was thinking of how I was going to approach the feature. And if it didn't really work that way for the web series, then I can basically, just reassess it when I get into making the feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what can you tell us about a feature film you want to make, Alison?
Yes. So my working title right now, it's called EI, Emotional Intelligence. I am thinking of, maybe a new title that ties into it, because at the time when I first wrote the script, and again, the first time always feels like, oh, this is a great idea. Then when you come back in retrospect, like, okay, no, that I was a little too ambitious for that one. But I started writing it in like 2017, and it was very much a pandemic-based story. And I was at the time planning to start filming it in 2020. But as we know, the pandemic hit. And it's so weird as we're watching all these things that happen in real life happen, and it kind of almost reflects what happened in my script, which I thought was surreal and science fiction. I was like, yeah, nobody's going to want to watch that anymore because we've lived through it. So,
I see.
So don't want to give people any more PTSD than they already.
Right. Or like have to go through it yourself and relive it and just be like, what is happening?
I know.
All over again.
Because I was like, I think like there's one part of the script where I was like, okay, because in essence, the story is about like a neurological disease that's impacting only children. And it's just, it's spreading. And it's like that race against time to figure out how to get a cure. And in this version, it was, they're able to find like a vaccination or something within a year. And I talked to a couple of scientists like, oh, that's not possible. And then, well, what do you know? In time of need, we will.
Right.
So, I mean, but since then, I basically have rewritten it so that it's now post pandemic, and it basically tackles just, I think, pharmaceutical corporate greed and circles around that. So we have this life-saving medication that could potentially save a lot of lives. But what do you know? Prices get hiked. And my main character, Mona, has to figure out, what does she do? How can she save her son? And goes through all these, ethical questions to get her through it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's so relevant in like so many different ways, even still. Like, even like aside from the pandemic, I mean, pharmaceutical greed, 100%. Like a family is diabetic and sometimes they're just like, I can't, like, how are we going to pay for insulin, which is a lifesaver? Like, it's insane. So that's incredibly prevalent, but especially in regards to children.
Yeah.
What a great idea for a script. I'm excited to watch this once it comes out.
Thank you. I'm, fingers crossed that it's all in there, and just doing final tweaks right now on the script itself. Wow. But I honestly feel way better about how it's turning out in terms of story than what I had written, a few years back.
Right.
Wow.
I'm just curious about creatively how you think. Have you created a corporation yet for your pharmaceutical group or world building?
I did. I do. I have one.
Is it? What's the name? Can you tell us the name? Anything?
Yeah. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but it's called Didwin Pharmaceuticals.
Oh, really? Okay. Because that's your production group, right? Name? Right?
No, Genie Productions is
okay.
Yeah,
Ooh.
But no, I think because one of the difficult things when I'm script writing is I cannot for the life of me think of names. And it just feels like, I'll throw a name out there and, hopefully nobody thinks I'm talking about them type of thing. And when I was trying to think of potential names for this pharmaceutical company, I basically went into like Greek mythology to figure out, what were all these, health or negative, or otherwise, without giving away too much, gods that came up, and this was one.
Right.
So that's how I picked that name.
Okay.
That's really cool.
What's the name again?
It's a Deadwen, so it's Deedwen. Can I even spell it?
Deadwen.
Interesting.
That is really cool. I like how
Yeah.
creative you came up with that too.
But you're right. There are a lot of like mythology names and
I figured
like
that would at least give it some substance, because if you were to go in and take a look at it, like, okay, I can see where they, like Theranos, it sounds so
right. Right. Umbrella Corporation. No.
Yeah. So, having filmed, quite a few things so far and ramping up to this feature, what so far have you, enjoyed most about filming here in Minnesota?
So I really think once I'm able to, find the people to work with, it's really great to collaborate with people because as filmmakers, sometimes you just feel like it's you by yourself, all siloed. And so unless you have that community around you, it feels like it's, party of one. But, when you finally get on set and you're able to interact with everybody else and see everybody give their own interpretation of the film and get excited about it, like that's what I really enjoy, the collaborative nature.
Right.
It's the best.
I hear you on that. From like either pre-production or post-production, it can be a lonely road sometimes. It's just kind of like strange how that works, how it's kind of a bell curve of like interaction. So yeah, in a couple ways, because pre-production, you're doing everything with all the people constantly. Post-production, and then you have to promote it. So you're out there with everyone, in front of everyone, right? Trying to just be like, please. Well, I mean, like the writing and the editing, like that. Those are the two major stages that just like it's hard.
Very isolated. Yeah.
And then you have to figure out, is this any good? It's like, do you like this, or do you, get some feedback maybe?
Yeah. Like who can I tap into that I haven't over tapped into yet to like
yeah, without causing burnout.
Right.
Who
have you made films outside of Minnesota at all?
I haven't, no. It's something that a few years back I was curious about, because again, if anything, I'm curious about like how the other industries work, in all these other locations, because you always hear stuff about how it's so easy to get stuff done in LA, and I'm assuming, well, that's because everybody's there, and if you're all friends and you got some downtime, why not? Let's try and be the next Steven Spielberg or something. Who knows? But then in other markets, it's probably not like that. Or I've heard Atlanta is really exciting. So I have been curious, but at the same time, it's like, what? I kind of like it here. I like my groove that I have right now. I like the people that I'm getting to know. So I'm comfortable enough in a sense where it's like, I don't need to go exploring quite yet.
Right. Well, on that note, I'm gonna sneak in here. So talk about WIFT, MN WIFT.
Yes. So the Minnesota Women in Film and Television is an nonprofit organization, Minnesota chapter. Originally, Women in Film started in LA, like in the 70s. And then since then has kind of grown state to state, and then is now international. So for the Minnesota chapter, it was started in 2005 by a bunch of, local women professionals, some of whom with the intention of raising, in the most basic sense, raising the equity of women in film. And so I officially joined it in 2016 and, just wanted to, again, look for that community, because as part of the whole diversity factor of diversifying this industry, I was like, I want to see more women like all over. Like I'm, female empowerment all the way. Like that's me. So I wanted to join this organization because like, okay, I know they do something like that. And I'm I've been a part of so many, small groups where like, okay, we want to do something for women. And I'm like, well, why it got to a point where I felt like it was almost burnout, but I was like, why be a part of like 7? Not that it's bad, but it just felt like it was a lot to do when you can be a part of this one organization and figure out how we can, give it more of a voice if that's what it's lacking, right? Because everybody wants this. So I recently became president in 2021. And our goal has been to, which ties along with our mission, empower women. So we do like mentoring programs where we match up newer folks with people, mostly women who have been in the industry for quite some time, so that they can help them navigate this new landscape of the film industry. We try to have as many educational panels as much as possible. So for example, in June, we're planning to have a TV director named Laura Belzy. She's a connection through one of the board members, but she's done, some really good programming, but plan to have her on a panel to talk to us about how she made it, what she did during her, slow periods, how she grew into the TV industry and things like that. And then also just look for ways to socialize with each other so that we're able to network with each other. So plan to have, especially now that I think people are getting a little bit more comfortable with meeting in person, plan to have ever so often, happy hour, so people can meet with each other and connect with each other. So just looking for different ways to make sure that we're just hitting, all those needs and wants and making sure that there is that connection, because I feel like definitely in Minnesota, this is one of the places where, it was really, really hot and happening in the 80s and 90s, and then it quieted down. And then now there's this gap of people who, like, if you were super experienced, you continue to get employed, but then you're maybe phasing out of your career at this time, or you move to a different, network of people. And then you have these up and comers who are hungry for work.
Yes.
Got a tax incentive, which is great, but then it's like, well, we need to make sure that these new people who are hungry are trained. So we're really trying our best to, work with other organizations locally to help bridge the gap between those two, so that when all these, because again, we had a pretty big production here recently that just wrapped filming. So when those other new ones come and start calling, we do have a workforce that allows them to keep on coming back.
So is there, if people want to maybe look into participating in these events or going to these events, how can they maybe hear about them or connect with WIFT?
Yeah. So we really do our best to make sure that we publicize through social media any and all events that we have coming up. And we do not restrict it to people. Maybe the only benefit is, members get to attend it for free, while everybody else has like a small fee. Because again, it just keeps us, we're nonprofit, everybody's 100% volunteer. So we don't really make a ton of money as an as a nonprofit organization. So just looking for small ways to make sure that we can still be operational and continue to help. So so social media is really great. Otherwise, if you join as a member through MNWIFT.org, so that's MNWIFT.org, we have a private network where if there's something that we want to make sure that it's beneficial for our members, but sometimes we get like festival discounts, festival ticket discounts, or first news about a job opening or something like that. We make sure that we get it to our members first through that private network.
So become a member.
Yes.
Support women in film and television in Minnesota.
And you don't have to be a woman to join. We are open as long as you support our mission and vision. Like, we welcome you open arms.
There you go.
Love it. So touching base again a little bit on your experience in making films, what have you run into that has really been the biggest challenge while you've been making, whether it's a short film or your web series, or even in the pre-production so far of the feature?
Yeah. So, money aside and time aside, because that's every Minnesota
Always.
filmmaker's issue.
Yes.
It's like, sometimes you see these posts about people who are putting on these productions, like, where are you getting your money from? Please tell me. So
Yes.
Share the secret.
intrigued, you know?
Yeah.
But so, and then again, I'm a full-time project manager. So the film has to happen like in a weekend window kind of thing, or for like my last project, I did take a couple of days off work just to have it fit all in, one weekend. But outside of those two, I really think the hard part is really finding those genuine people who do want to work. Because I know that there's some folks who are out there that have been here doing this a long time that are jaded. They may come in happy, but then, leave like a really, really heavy dent in your project. And I not always avoidable, but it happens, right? It's the world. So I really do try to make sure that when I am prepping for a project and I'm trying to think of, who's going to be on it, not only as crew, but also as cast, because cast as well, they, as much as they think that they just come in and say their lines, their attitude does influence a lot of what is happening on set. So it's
absolutely.
So it's really important for me to make sure that the folks that I have on are like, genuine folks, considerate folks, and it's finding the right people.
Yes.
Yeah, that can make or break it.
Right. I could only imagine if you had a big name and they were kind of not influencing, but bossing people around, even like the director or something, like putting their arm on the shoulders kind of thing, I don't know. Maybe that's just,
I don't mind, questions and feedback, but the delivery is very important, So the way you come at me with, your feelings or misgivings could sway how I will want to work with you again in the future.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, professional but respectful.
Exactly.
Or professional and not but and respectful.
However.
Yeah. Actually.
Except just like the way everyone interprets something, and nowadays with film, the way it's just like if you're meeting with people over Zoom and like there's COVID protocols now, and like you get very little time together probably to work out the chemistry or something in a dialogue scene or something, something that's important.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that was something that even just working on, I want to say maybe most of my films, like I don't do a ton of rehearsals because one thing that I want to make sure that the actors come back with is that it feels organic and not over rehearsed. And the only reason why I say that is because, the talent pool too is varying, right? And sometimes some folks do want to, especially actors, they really do want to impress, and some definitely go above and beyond, and I do appreciate that. But then I don't want anybody coming back feeling like, okay, because you had given me this note about this is how I'm going to act this out. Like I want it to feel like your character actually did that, and not because if you do and it doesn't work, then I'll give you that direction. But I feel like most of the times that first reaction from them is, as long as I explain where I'm headed at with the scene, I feel like more times than not, the actors do hit that mark. So I maybe do like 1 or 2 reads with them, and then I'm like, come on set and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And having cast that's able to, be flexible like that and say, okay, so this is how I see it, and give you that natural, like immediate response and reaction, but then being able to respectfully take that feedback. And just collaborate is huge, because if they can't do that, then that's
right.
And I'm not going to want to work with them.
Right. And I've grown as a director too, because I think when I first started with, script to screen, and, the actors, at least they were all really good about asking me, how far can I take this? And at first it was like, do not diverge from the script. But then that has slowly migrated into make sure the essence of what I'm trying to get at comes out.
Yeah.
Like there are very
I
few
hear
things
you.
like you have to say this word and you have to say this word because it
Right.
ties into like scene, 52
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But more times than not, it's like as long as that the essence of where we're trying to head at in this scene flows and it doesn't interrupt your scene partner's flow, let's give it a go.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah, man, we could talk about this for a while, but when it comes to it, like a new project or something, what's something you look forward to the most? Like, just a film, a series. What is it that you like the most about the process?
Yeah. So what I like most about the process is, this may feel a little bit trivial, but it's having a finished script. Like you have no idea how painful it is to even get to that step.
Oh yes, I do.
And then once you're finally there, it's like, oh wow, I made something,
Yeah.
And then the other part that because I'm not a fan of editing. Like I can sit through it, I can watch the footage. That stuff is not fun. But also sometimes too, it's like I find editing to be an extremely humbling experience because when you're writing, it's like, oh, this is amazing, and then when you're acting, it's like, oh, you nailed that. And when you see it in editing, it just because it's so chopped, it's like I don't remember feeling that way when we shot this and when I wrote this. So I'm very disappointed with the scene. But when it's all done and it's all together, it's like, oh wow, it really did work. So that my other favorite part is the finished product.
Yeah.
Getting it up.
The total package has arrived.
Yeah. Some like really solid steps.
Exactly. So like it makes me feel like, okay, I wasn't crazy after all. I wasn't
right.
I wasn't misthinking about something. Yeah, the emotion is there, the feeling is there. They did what they had to. They gave. So
I never think the script is done. I mean, it's just kind of like, is it done? I don't know. It's there.
Right? That's me. I'm like, it's there. This is going to be it. And then hopefully nothing else comes up that would need me because I'm not like an on the spot thinker. So there'll be times when it's like if I'm on set, I'm like, oh, this word is wrong. What do you want me to say here? I'm like, oh God, my brain has shut down at that stage. So and I don't know how to write anymore at that point.
Like you're past that step.
Because you're doing producing, you're doing directing, you're doing all these other things. And then you have to concentrate on like the direction or the camera or, something.
Everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, just say this. And then when because it happened in one of my scenes here in the web series, like, oh, just say this. And I thought that was it because that's what the person had responded to. And then when I saw it in editing, I was like, oh, girl, I got her to say the wrong word. Right. And then it bugged me for a little bit. But after I was like, you know what? No one's going to notice. Just you. So.
Yeah, it's true. Because we see the script and we see the edit and it's like,
So you're working on this feature, finishing up step 1, and outside of that, what's next for you? Like, what's next in your vision?
Yeah. So, because I'm in between I could probably say in between 2 projects right now, with the web series just having its series premiere this Sunday. Over the next 4 weeks, because it's 8 episodes total, roughly 3 to 5 minutes each. I'm releasing 2 episodes each week.
Ooh,
so
nice.
A lot of my time has been going into promo because this, like I said, is my test run for my feature. Like when I'm done, I want to know what didn't work when I was doing promo for the web series, so I can make sure that when I'm doing it for the feature, it gets into to the right folks. Yeah. So I've kind of taken a pause on doing my final tweaks on the feature script for now until I can get to a good spot, at least with the web series. So probably once all the episodes are out in June, I'll be able to shift focus back into the feature. But next thing's up with that one, because again, I really am very, very close to wrapping that up. Be looking into casting. There are a couple of folks that I have in mind for certain roles, so I'll probably be reaching out to them to figure out timing, because that's another part too. Like when you're trying to do an indie, nobody's available for anything that you want when you want it. So we have to figure out scheduling. So that's going to be like the next big thing. But ultimately, and I've been going back and forth with this one between like immediately self-distributing or giving it some festival time before self-distributing. So I need to make sure that when I'm doing my production schedule, it hits so that I don't have to wait like a whole year before, if I do
right.
That waiting game is brutal.
Oh, it is.
That's hard.
Can't stand it.
So because originally I thought I would have at least started production by now, but the way things have been going, schedules are out the window. But I am hoping, before the end of the year, I can at least get something up edited. And I have a good plan, because again, just knowing how the editing phase went with this web series, I have a better plan for how to hopefully make that be a little bit smoother and faster for the feature, so it doesn't take as long and things like that. But just trying to make sure that I'm taking care of both my babies right now.
No kidding. I'm busy.
Right. Well, Alison, where can people find your work or follow you and support you?
So my website is genieproductions.com. So that's DJINI productions.com. We have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for Genie Productions. The only difference with Twitter is Genie Productions was too long. The S didn't fit, so it's Genie Production on Twitter. But otherwise, like, all my projects are listed on my website, and all of them have their own Facebook page as well. So if you're ever curious, you could definitely like and follow on those pages. But like the web series itself, it's on YouTube right now, and we'll be, like I said, releasing 2 episodes each week on YouTube.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. And this is the big one, the important question. Alison, what do you want people to remember most about you, whether it's from working with you or after like watching and experiencing one of your films or shows?
Yeah, for me, I want people, when watching and experiencing my shows or my work, is to have that memorable feeling. Like, I'm trying to get to that piece of work where it's like, this is like history making type of work. And I have a few future projects that I know for sure will fit that window. Maybe even my current ones, who knows?
Absolutely.
But definitely, just want to make sure that I made work that made people care.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, Alison, this has been amazing. Really great to meet you and get to know you. Had a lot of fun chatting today. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to sit with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Out. This is fun. I'm always happy to do these.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you on again soon. All right. And thank you to all of our listeners. This has been Film in Minnesota.